What would you choose if faced with the option to follow your heart or fulfill the expectations of others? Welcome to Happiness of Love, your daily dose of K-dramas. Get ready to fall in love with unforgettable stories. Can you tell us where are you listening from? As the plane touched down on the sun-drenched runway of Jeju, David Park felt a wave of frustration wash over him. He had imagined this trip as a brief escape, swathed in luxury as he lounged by the turquoise waters, but instead, he found himself in an unfamiliar land that exuded the scent of fresh ocean breeze and blooming hibiscus. The moment he disembarked, he could feel the island's twofold charm and simplicity gnawing at him, as he scowled through the chaos of bustling tourists and eager locals. His father's last orders echoed ominously in his mind, a foreboding reminder that he was here to learn humility, a concept he found utterly ridiculous. He expected a warm welcome at the upmarket hotel his father had arranged, picturing himself pampered in the lavish style he was accustomed to, akin to the all-star treatment he'd grown up with. Yet, the moment he stepped inside Maya Lee's quaint hotel, he was immediately engulfed by a world that was anything but glamorous. The cheerful decor, bright with pops of color and inviting floral arrangements, only added to his irritation. A woman with bright, kind eyes and an infectious smile, Maya, he would soon learn, approached him with the enthusiasm of someone who loved her work. "Welcome to Jeju Paradise Hotel." She beamed, oblivious to his scowl. Without a second thought, she handed him a mop and a bucket, beaming as she explained he would be helping with some cleaning duties. David stood frozen in shock, his jaw clenching in disbelief as she explained the routine. A temporary worker is always appreciated. Clenching the mop like a lifeline, David was forced into labor, his heart boiling with indignation. "You must be joking," he fumed, storming behind the front desk, trying to figure out how to salvage his pride. But just as he was gearing up to storm out, the heavens conspired against him. A tropical storm rolled in, slashing the sun and engulfing his escape route in torrential rain. He gritted his teeth as he grabbed his phone, only to find his flight had been cancelled. "This is not happening," he muttered darkly, eyeing the few guests who were now watching him with bemusement. Half-heartedly, he picked up the mop, feeling it absurdly heavy in his hand. His arrogance clashed with the absurdity of the situation, leading to a comical disaster as he slipped and landed spectacularly on the floor. Laughter erupted from a couple of older guests who had come down for breakfast, and the sounds of their chuckles filled the vibrant air of the lobby. Mortification bubbled within him as he stared at Maya, who had burst into laughter along with her guests, her eyes twinkling in mirth. She stepped closer, barely suppressing her giggles, and playfully told him he might want to take it easy next time. David grumbled in response, bristling at the audacity of this cheerful woman who seemed completely unbothered by his mood. His resentment bubbled over as he embarked on a series of comedic disasters throughout the hotel. Cleaning supplies mixed with a sprinkle of local flavor turned simple tasks into slapstick routines. Overturned carts and misplaced towels underscored the rising tension in their interactions, David's arrogance challenging Maya's unshakable patience. "If you don't like it, you can always ask for a ride back home," she shot back playfully, her head cocked, a teasing grin dancing on her lips. With every sarcastic retort, every sidelong glance, Maya found a way to combat his sulking behavior, while David cleverly attempted to maintain his aloofness, caught in a web of blunders that would have made anyone else crack. As hours passed, the ferocity of David's irritation met with the island's unexpected allure, and beneath all the bickering and outrage brewed something unfamiliar within him. Little did he realize that his time in Jeju, initially painted in shades of resentment, was about to change the very fabric of who he thought he was. David Park continued to march through the charming corridors of Maya Lee's small hotel, each step laden with disdain for the island life that encumbered him. He rolled his eyes at the quaint decor that flourished with handmade crafts and rustic charm, his luxury-saturated upbringing clouding his ability to appreciate anything less polished. Every interaction with the cheerful staff felt like a test of his patience, and he was resolute that he would not sink to their level. In his mind, he was a guest in Heir accustomed to silk sheets and gold-plated amenities. He had not signed up for the mediocrity he found in Jeju. He expected high-end hospitality but found himself submerged in menial tasks that made his stomach churn with disgust. When Maya asked him to wipe down tables, he scoffed at the request, asserting that he had far more important things to do than play errand boy. Maya, with her ever-patient demeanor, simply smiled and said that everyone had to pitch in, a response that only fueled his irritation. She was a steady force at the hotel, always bustling about to ensure each guest experienced warmth and comfort, but to David, she felt like an adversary who stood in the way of his entitlement. With every passing meal, David's complaints filled the air, each one dripping with frustration. He glared at simple dishes of seasoned fish and fresh vegetables, lamenting over the absence of haute cuisine that could grace the tables of Seoul's elite. He said that he couldn't believe this was what people ate on vacation, while Maya simply reminded him how vital local ingredients were for the authentic experience she sought to create. Their conversation often escalated into light-hearted banter, laden with sarcasm and biting remarks, but Maya never wavered from her genuinely warm approach, which only seemed to aggravate David further. One afternoon, while serving breakfast, he voiced his discontent, lamenting how late the coffee was served, fully convinced that the island's slow pace was entirely unacceptable. Maya, without skipping a beat, replied that the slow process allowed time for conversation, for connection among guests, explaining how the mornings were often the most cherished moments at the hotel. Yet, amid David's complaining, something began to twist within him, like a budding flower striving for sunlight hidden beneath layers of stubbornness. As the days passed, he occasionally caught himself watching Maya interact with the guests, her face alight with genuine joy lighting up the otherwise simple ambience of the hotel. She handled everything with grace, fluttering from one task to another, her laughter mingling with the waves that crashed against the shore just outside. They were moments he could not dismiss, for he found himself intrigued by the way guests would light up at her every word and how she effortlessly spread an atmosphere of belonging in her little corner of the world. One morning, while feigning indifference at the front desk, his gaze fell upon an elderly couple struggling with their beach chairs. Without realizing it, he had leaned forward, momentarily curious about how Maya would respond. She quickly rushed over, her arms reaching out to offer assistance, and in that moment, the world around David seemed to freeze. He watched her guide the frail woman with gentle hands, their conversation punctuated by warm smiles. The couple expressed their heartfelt gratitude, and Maya's face radiated warmth as she leaned in closely to hear their stories. A strange sensation stirred within him, an echo of something unfamiliar, and for the first time, he found himself questioning the larger truths he had clung to so tightly. The realization that her kindness resonated with these guests cut through his armor, but David scolded himself for such a weakness. He was an heir, yet here he stood, mesmerized by the simplicity that Maya seemed to personify. As they passed one another later in the hallway, David's mouth opened for a retort, but silence emerged instead. She caught his gaze, and for a fleeting instant, the bickering gave way to an unspoken acknowledgement of his softened demeanor. Maya tilted her head, a hint of curiosity dancing in her eyes as if she sensed a shift. But David quickly shoved his feelings away, retreating to the familiar armor of arrogance, refusing to engage in whatever transformation stirred within him. Instead, he perpetuated the conflict, letting anger bubble to the surface once again as he snapped about the lack of luxury in her hotel, though a small part of him was beginning to see the cracks in his own well-crafted facade. With every argument, however, a different kind of understanding dawned on him, though he would not dare to admit it, let alone voice it aloud. He remained focused on the irony of the situation, how he was slowly drifting apart from the man he once thought he was, all because of Maya Lee and the enchanting simplicity of her life in Jeju. As days passed in the serene embrace of Jeju, David found himself reluctantly caught in the rhythm of island life despite his initial disdain for everything surrounding him. With the summer sun casting its warm glow daily, he could feel its influence slowly seeping into his hardened exterior. Amidst the chirping of cicadas and the gentle lapping of waves against the shore, David began to find himself unwittingly engaging in small acts of kindness that surprised even him. A flickering light bulb in one of the hotel rooms caught his attention one morning, and though he usually would have dismissed such menial tasks, he climbed a ladder with a stoic determination he never thought he had, muttering under his breath about how this was beneath him. As he tightened the screws and replaced the bulb, he sensed a strange satisfaction blooming within, one he hadn't felt in ages. Even more surprising was the way the elderly couple who had been staying at the hotel beamed with appreciation when he carried their heavy luggage up the winding stairs. The husband, with a twinkle in his eyes, said that David had the strength of a young man but the heart of an old sage. This unexpected compliment stirred something in David, a fleeting warmth that momentarily dispelled the grumpiness that often clouded his demeanor. Meanwhile, the hotel staff, who initially eyed him with skepticism, began to take note of these small changes. Each moment of reluctant participation transformed his gruffness into a quirky charm. The bellboy, young sick, started to chuckle every time David struggled with a simple cleaning task, finding humor in his exaggerated overreactions and complaints. With each contorted facial expression and dramatic sigh, David's attempts at futile tasks became a beloved source of entertainment, and soon, laughter filled the hallways in a way that was contagious. It was in these moments that Maya began to witness a different side of David. The climate of their interactions had shifted subtly, as she started to see layers of vulnerability beneath his arrogant facade. As she caught him helping an unsuspecting guest or awkwardly participating in the morning breakfast preparations, she realized that for every bit of arrogance he displayed, there lay a deep-seated insecurity that rendered him more human, more relatable. One afternoon, while delivering fresh towels to a room, Maya stumbled upon David deep in thought as he absent-mindedly sorted through a stack of flower arrangements. The blooms were a burst of color against the stark white linens, brightening the otherwise dull task. She leaned against the door frame, watching him as he gently straightened a wilting petal, a resolute concentration etched on his face that momentarily softened his usually scowling features. Intrigued, she couldn't help but wonder how the man she first encountered, a being of sheer entitlement, could now display such tenderness over something as simple as flowers. A warm smile crept onto her face as she stepped inside, prompting David to lift his head, startled by her presence. He turned to her, awkwardly stammering about the need for better arrangements since, in his words, they were far too rustic for refined guests. Maya responded by saying that even the simplest flowers could bring beauty to their lives if cared for properly, allowing a rare moment of silent understanding to unite them in the peaceful ambience of the hotel. As Richard Dorothea, a long-term vacationer, commended David for gradually becoming more helpful, he noticed how her compulsive admiration began to shine light on his own evolution. Although he grunted at her praises and rolled his eyes, a shy smile tugged at the corners of his lips as he acknowledged, however silently, that he was beginning to appreciate the sense of community the hotel fostered, a concept completely alien to him prior to his arrival. The more he immersed himself in the fabric of island life, the more he realized that everyone, including the quirky staff and the joyful locals, was woven into a tapestry far richer than he had ever known. Slowly, he shed the layers of disdain he had initially wrapped himself in, allowing fleeting moments of genuine camaraderie to seep in. And although he would never openly admit it, each smile from Maya, each small, begrudging acceptance of his evolving role, forged a delicate yet unbreakable bond that left him both anxious and oddly fulfilled. In the depths of his newfound experiences, David was unwittingly discovering the transformative power of connection, one that started beneath the watchful eyes of the gentle island, sparked by the warmth of the woman whom he had initially dismissed. As dawn broke over the serene landscape of Jeju, the first light illuminated the tranquil waves lapping against the shore of Maya Lee's charming hotel. Maya, with her hair tied back and sleeves rolled up, was in the kitchen early, preparing for the bustling breakfast rush. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee danced in the air, mingling with the scent of warm pastries and sizzling bacon, a delightful invitation for the guests who would soon flock to the breakfast tables. However, as she glanced at the stovetop, anxiety washed over her when she realized that the hotel's cook had fallen unwell, leaving her to shoulder the dawn responsibilities alone. Despite her mounting pressure, she remained resolute, reminding herself that taking care of her guests was her priority. Just as she was about to pour the pancake batter onto the griddle, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from behind her, and she turned to see David Park entering the kitchen, his expression a blend of annoyance and confusion. David had been trying to sleep off his dissatisfaction with Jeju life, but the chorus of bustling guests and the intoxicating aroma coaxed him out of bed. He expected to find the kitchen alive with culinary magic, yet he was met with the sight of Maya handling a myriad of tasks all by herself. He could hardly suppress the smirk that tugged at the corners of his lips as he watched her juggle pots and pans, muttering to herself under her breath about the impossibility of the situation. "This is not how a hotel should operate," David said bluntly, crossing his arms, but he couldn't ignore the flicker of admiration that sparked within him at her determination to handle everything single-handedly. Maya, catching the condescension in his tone, shot back that he could either keep watching her struggle or lend a hand, feistiness radiating from her as she addressed him directly for the first time, challenging him in a way he didn't expect. A silence fell upon them for a moment, tension crackling like the skillet on the burner. Unexpectedly, the silence was broken by David's grumbling stomach, reminding him of his own needs. He was not there to work, but a part of him flickered with an uncharacteristic urge to help. "What do you need?" he finally asked, his voice softer than before. Maya raised an eyebrow, surprised by his sudden shift, and before she could respond, the momentary lapse in her focus led to a minor disaster. A pot of boiling water nearly spilled over. Without thinking, David rushed in and stabilized it, his instincts kicking in despite his reluctance. This spontaneous act surprised both him and Maya, who noted the transformation beginning to stir within him. With a sigh, Maya took a step back and said that there was an extra apron hanging by the door if he was serious about helping. David hesitated, glancing between the apron and Maya, who was now clad in a flour-dusted t-shirt, her cheeks flushed from the heat of the stove. He remembered the days of his life in foreign kitchens and culinary classes, where passion met plate. Perhaps there was something deep within him that could support the delicate operation unfolding around them. He reached for the apron and tied it around his waist, looking particularly out of place, and Maya chuckled at the very sight of this spoiled heir attempting to blend into her world. As minutes turned into an hour, to everyone's surprise, David's hidden culinary talent emerged amidst the chaos. He sliced fresh vegetables with precision, whisked eggs until fluffy, and even found a way to incorporate Jeju's fragrant herbs into the breakfast, crafting a menu that far surpassed the usual fare. The kitchen filled with an inviting blend of sizzling sounds and colorful sights, and Maya watched in disbelief as David transformed under the warmth of the stove, each moment chipping away at the walls he had built up around himself. The guests began gathering in the dining area, their senses tantalized by the unexpected feast that awaited them. Maya stood at the side, mixing pancakes and flipping them deftly, all while stealing glances at David, who had seamlessly transitioned from reluctant helper to a surprisingly capable chef. She marveled at how the arrogant man she had clashed with more often than not was now able to contribute something genuinely meaningful. The breakfast lineup was nothing short of gourmet fluffy pancakes, vibrant vegetable frittata, and a basket brimming with Jeju's seasonal fruits were artfully displayed. When the guests took their first bites, their eyes lit up, and a lively atmosphere filled the dining space as praises flooded in, making both David and Maya beam with satisfaction. In that moment, while serving the guests and witnessing their joy, Maya caught David's eye across the room, and for the first time since he had arrived, their gazes met without the usual animosity. As they shared a subtle smile, something palpable shifted between them. It was as if layers of rivalry and misunderstanding began peeling away to reveal genuine appreciation for one another. Malicing breakfast had forged a new connection that neither of them anticipated. The air hummed with warmth from the laughter of guests and the clinking of cutlery, but within that bustling environment, a serene moment unfurled between David and Maya. He leaned against the kitchen counter, still wearing the apron that now seemed less ridiculous and more like a badge of honor. He modestly admitted that it felt good to do something useful for a change, and Maya responded by saying that she was grateful, which caught him off guard. Instead of the bickering that usually filled their interactions, there was a budding camaraderie blossoming in the air, an acknowledgement of how far they had both come. As the sun rose higher, casting soft shadows through the open kitchen windows, David felt a renewed sense of purpose, and Maya's heart swelled with an uncharacteristic excitement as she began to see the man behind the arrogance. The breakfast collaboration had shattered their earlier adversities, opening the door to a deeper understanding, and as they navigated the currents of this new phase together, the tangled threads of rivalry slowly transformed into a vibrant tapestry of unspoken connection and evolving emotions. The atmosphere of the hotel shimmered lightly with promise, and against all odds, David's initial disdain for Jeju started to morph into something he could only begin to comprehend as he immersed himself in Maya's world. Just as David and Maya began to navigate the delicate dance of their budding relationship, a sudden shift disrupted the tentative peace they'd created. The sun shone brightly over Jeju, casting a warm, golden hue over the hotel, where the scent of freshly baked goods wafted through the air, mingling delightfully with the salty breeze. Maya was in her element, comfortably managing the morning rush and making guests feel at home with her sweet smile and attentive care. David, who was now slowly warming to the island life, found himself unexpectedly looking forward to these moments with her, observing the way her eyes sparkled with joy as she effortlessly juggled requests from various guests. However, just as they shared a laugh over a mishap involving wayward ducks that had wandered into the lobby, a sleek black car pulled up outside, its shiny surface glinting under the sunlight. Maya's heart skipped a beat as the familiar figure emerged, and David instinctively felt the air thicken with tension. Chris Choi stepped out, his confident stride and effortlessly charming smile drawing the immediate attention of both staff and guests. Dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, he exuded the kind of charisma that could easily command a room. Maya watched, her expression a mix of surprise and unease, as he approached her with arms wide open, exuding an overwhelming sense of familiarity that made David's heart clench in his chest. "Look who decided to grace us with his presence," David muttered under his breath, unable to mask the irritation creeping into his tone as he crossed his arms, an impulsive defensive posture that surprised even him. He watched as Chris enveloped Maya in a warm hug. Clara, one of the hotel staff, noticing the storm brewing within David's demeanor as he studied the two. Chris pulled back, maintaining that charming smile, and said that it was good to see her, while Maya managed a small smile, caught in a web of memories that threatened to resurface. Chris, with his easy confidence, wasted no time in flaunting his successes. He spoke animatedly about his flourishing career in Seoul, casually dropping phrases that highlighted his privilege and the stability he could offer Maya. David's jaw tightened as he listened to each word, his previously warm and open expression gradually becoming shadowed by a scowl, and he found himself acting like a petulant child trying to assert his place. As Chris discussed his latest projects, David interjected with snarky quips, his sarcasm seeping through any hint of civility, growing more irritable with each laugh Chris drew from Maya. "So, you're still playing the humble hotelier, huh?" he sneered, crossing his arms even tighter, unable to comprehend the pang of jealousy twisting inside of him. Maya, caught between two sharply contrasting worlds, felt her heart battling with her mind. She had long since broken free from the confines of her past relationship, but Chris's return stirred something within her, a sense of comfort paired with lingering affection. As she watched David's increasingly childish behavior, her patience began to wane. She loved the new David, who surprised her with his culinary skills and demonstrated a vulnerability that melted the rigidity she had previously associated with him. Yet, here was Chris, the man who once felt like home, royally disrupting the delicate equilibrium she and David were starting to build. "David, could you chill for a minute?" she said, trying to curve the sharp words that had begun to slip into every interaction with Chris. As the day unfolded, the tension turned palpable, an invisible barrier surrounding their interactions. David struggled to keep his irritation at bay as Maya found herself drawn back into conversations with Chris, reminiscing about carefree times they had spent together. He clenched his fists behind his back, the grinding of his teeth echoing in his mind as Chris leaned closer to Maya, drawing her into discussions that made her laugh freely, while David felt the tightening coil of possessiveness strangle his heart. That cord of bewildered jealousy grew heavier with every shared smile and lingering glance, as he found himself retreating into silence, stuck between wanting to shout and coming off as love-struck fool. Observing this dynamic, Maya sensed the strain on David, yet she couldn't entirely shake the fondness her heart still carried for Chris. David's internal turmoil became a visible storm, causing his demeanor to shift rapidly from sarcastic to despondent. When Chris dared to challenge David with playful jabs about Jeju's rustic charm, he could no longer contain the bubbling annoyance. "Oh please, tell me more about how amazing city life must be," he shot back, sarcasm dripping off his words, but Chris only laughed as if David was a child throwing a tantrum. Maya caught the flicker of irritation on David's face and felt her heart racing, not from Chris's charm, but from the realization that David really did care, even if he clumsily masked it with sarcasm. Her mind wrestled with the duality of the moment. The bright, cheerful memories with Chris contrasted sharply against the burgeoning connection she had with David, who slowly opened up to reveal the complexities beneath his arrogant facade. The dynamic became a tangled web of emotions, where past and present entwined, making it increasingly difficult for Maya to understand her heart. As David stormed off in frustration, muttering about Chris's superficial charm and the many privileges that came with it, Maya felt the weight of her choices closing in, teetering on the precipice of uncertainty as she chased after David, hoping to mend the growing rift as tension loomed between the three of them. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the lush landscape of Jeju, Maya found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. The vibrant colors of the local festival illuminated the charming streets, where laughter mingled with the intoxicating scents of traditional food stalls. Chris Choi, her charming and successful ex-boyfriend, had shown up unexpectedly, his presence igniting memories she had thought she'd buried. He was eloquent, his smooth voice cutting through the celebratory chaos as he recounted tales of his accomplishments, each word wrapped in a comfortable familiarity that both lured and repelled her. Maya's heart wavered between the stability Chris offered, a glittering life free of uncertainty, and the uncharted territory of her connection with David. Meanwhile, David was grappling with his own inner storm. He was fighting hard against the budding feelings that had taken root in his heart, unwilling to allow himself to acknowledge the depth of his emotions toward Maya. Every glance he cast her way was tinged with frustration. Seeing her laugh with Chris twisted his stomach into knots as jealousy flared within him. Although he pretended to be indifferent, his tension was palpable, and the air between them crackled with unexpressed sentiments. During the festivities, a moment struck like lightning when they found themselves stealing glances, a shared connection forming amidst the chaos. David, overcome with emotion, finally uttered words that felt like thunder breaking through the silence. He said that being in Jeju had liberated him in ways he never thought possible, as if the weight of his family's expectations had lifted, replaced instead by the warm embrace of the island's charm and Maya's genuine spirit. His admission hung in the air, and Maya felt her breath catch. They were dancing, surrounded by sparks of light and joy, the rhythm of drums synchronized with the quickening of their hearts. As they moved closer, David's resolve began to waver. In that moment, raw vulnerability enveloped them like an invisible shield. The world around them faded, the laughter and music receding into a distant echo as the only reality was the undeniable connection, electric yet tender. Maya, feeling the pull of his honesty, found herself entranced by David's deep-set eyes, which reflected the same confusion, longing, and hope she had buried deep within her. And just like that, she surrendered to the whim of the moment, leaning in to kiss him, a sweet gesture fueled by unspoken feelings. But even as the warmth of their lips met, a sudden wave of panic washed over her, extinguishing the euphoric spark of the kiss almost as swiftly as it had ignited. The warmth turned to dread as regret washed over her. She was caught between two men, each representing different paths in life, and that rash decision felt like a step into chaos. David, surprised and frozen in place, looked at her with a mixture of astonishment and hope, his heart racing amidst the confused chaos of emotions swirling within them. Maya took a step back, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment as she stammered that she shouldn't have let her emotions take control. This moment, charged with electricity and filled with intricate layers of affections, shifted the gravity of their reality, and both were left grappling with their feelings in the wake of an unexpected encounter that held the potential to change everything, yet felt so painfully unresolved. As the days drew on, a heavy fog of confusion enveloped Maya. The kiss they shared at the local festival lingered in her mind like the sweet scent of blooming hibiscus, yet she found herself steering clear of David, heart racing every time he drew near, unsure of how to navigate the tangled emotions stirred within her. Each encounter became a delicate dance. She would slip away into the kitchen or immerse herself in the tasks of the hotel, pretending to be preoccupied while feeling the heat of his gaze lingering on her back. David, on the other hand, felt an unfamiliar urgency building within him, a longing not just for Maya's presence but for the warmth of connection he had only recently begun to appreciate. He found himself seeking her out more than ever, his heart fidgeting with possibilities as he attempted to bridge the growing distance. On one fragrant afternoon, as the sun bathed the hotel in golden light, David approached her with a sincerity that was new and raw, saying that he wanted to be honest about his feelings, ready to unveil this newfound tenderness to her. Yet, just as hope began to flicker in the air, the arrival of his father shattered the serenity of their idyllic paradise. Mr. Park, imposing and relentless, strode into the small hotel like a storm cloud, a frown etched tightly across his brow, and immediately demanded his son's attention. His voice boomed with authority, cutting through the soft sounds of waves crashing against the shore and laughter from the guests, declaring that David had wasted enough time in quaint Jeju and it was time to return to the responsibilities that awaited him back in Seoul. The words hung thick in the air, suffocating the lightness of their earlier moments and sending Maya's heart plummeting. David felt his spine stiffen, torn between the escalating demands of his father and the quiet happiness he had discovered alongside Maya, each moment with her bubbling with warmth and possibility. It was as if the vibrant colors of the island began to fade with the weight of Mr. Park's expectations, and in that moment, David turned to Maya, hoping she would understand. He pleaded with her, urging her to come with him, to step into the life he was expected to reclaim, but the look on her face shifted like the tides, an echo of disbelief washing over her. A hesitant shake of her head revealed her collision of emotions. She couldn't abandon her cherished dreams, her beloved hotel, the very essence of her life that had flourished on this island, and as she told him that it was impossible to leave, it felt like a piece of her heart was crumbling into the sands. They stood there, feeling the distance grow as an unbreakable chasm formed between them, the sun setting behind them like a curtain drawing to a close on their carefree days, and as David prepared to leave, a feeling of irrevocable loss settled heavily in his chest. Their goodbye felt like a slice through the fabric of their connection, each word wrapping around them with the chill of vulnerability, David plagued by regret for not grasping the freedom he had found in her while he had the chance. In that fleeting moment, as he turned his back to her, each step a reminder of what he stood to lose, Maya felt a new wave of emotion crash over her, realizing that perhaps it was not just pride and dreams she was willing to defend, but a love she had just begun to recognize was blossoming. With the ocean's roar echoing their unspoken turmoil, their destinies diverged, leaving both of them grappling with an emptiness that would follow them long after the echoes of their laughter faded in the salty wind. Back in Seoul, the bustling city echoed David's discontent, every honking car and flashing advertisement amplifying the emptiness that filled him. The grand office of his father loomed before him, a symbol of the life he had always taken for granted, but now felt suffocating. Surrounded by luxury yet feeling like a precious piece of furniture gathering dust, he sat in a crisp leather chair, the aroma of fresh coffee doing nothing to soothe his restless soul. The bright skyline, once a source of pride, now seemed like gilded cages that restricted not just himself but others too. He longed for the warm sunsets of Jeju and the gentle sound of waves, wishing he could exchange the city's vibrancy for the tranquil pace of island life. David contemplated how he had traded his freedom for expectations, yearning for the open skies where the stars twinkled with promise rather than the oppressive shadows of his father's ambitions. He turned to the window, his gaze lost in the horizon, and he whispered to no one, recalling Maya's laughter, her warmth, and how she made everyday ordinary moments extraordinary. Meanwhile, in Jeju, Maya found herself entangled in a web of conflicting emotions. Chris's attempts to woo her back were relentless and charming, flaunting his success as a respected doctor. He filled the hotel with his affable presence, painting the walls with his laughter, but the more she saw him, the more she felt the chasm between their worlds widen. Despite the comfort his stability offered, her heart had learned to crave the exhilarating chaos David brought into her life, the way he stirred her spirit and made her feel alive. She wandered the familiar paths of Jeju, the fragrant scent of blooming hibiscus mingling with salty air, but instead of peace, she felt an insatiable longing. Each sunset reminded her of the intimate dance they shared, where for a fleeting moment, everything felt right until it was snatched away by duty. While Chris attempted to reignite their past, showering her with gifts and promises of a secure future, she found herself smiling politely yet feeling hollow inside. In those moments, she recalled David's rough edges softened by humor and vulnerability, how his frown transformed into an unexpected smile over a simple cup of coffee, and how he saw the beauty in her world that she so often overlooked. As Chris's words flowed like sweet syrup, promising her a life devoid of the chaos of uncertainty, she could not shake the feeling that her heart had made its choice long ago, a choice that sparked life into her veins and resonated in the rhythm of her heartbeat, a choice that echoed David's name. In both their worlds, their hearts were warring against the weight of expectations, but beneath the surface, a quiet desperation fueled their thoughts. David, in his plush office surrounded by reminders of his father's control, struggled with the thought of driving to Jeju, imagining the happiness that awaited him there, while Maya, lost in her dreams, fought against letting go of a love that had been so transformative. As the city lights flickered in his vision, a flicker of determination ignited within David. The life of comfort demanded by his father felt more like shackles. With each passing day, he understood that true wealth was found in connections made, laughter shared, and love embraced. And so, with longing as his compass, both he and Maya pondered the weight of their choices, each wondering how to reclaim a joy they once took for granted, knowing deep down the greatest battle was not against the world outside but against the limitations they placed upon themselves. David had spent the last few days in a haze of confusion and longing, trapped in a luxurious prison built by his father's expectations in Seoul, where each corner of his opulent home seemed to taunt him with memories of Maya and the carefree days at the hotel. The vibrancy of Jeju felt like a distant dream, one that slipped further away with each passing minute. He could no longer drown out the whispers of his heart urging him to break free from the gilded cage that his father had designed for him. The weight of duty and familial obligations felt suffocating, and it was then that David decided to reclaim his life, fueled by a determination to embrace the happiness he had tasted only briefly. That afternoon, he confronted his father in the cold, pristine office that felt more like a throne than a workspace, asserting himself with a newfound confidence. He could almost feel Maya's supportive spirit beside him as he declared that he would not take over the family business, that he would forge his own path instead. Mr. Park's eyes darkened with disbelief as he attempted to reassert his authority over David, insisting that he was making a grave mistake. However, David stood firm, the thrill of liberation coursing through him as he declared that life was not merely about wealth but about joy, the kind of joy he had discovered in the warmth of those sunlit mornings on Jeju, where laughter spilled from guests, and the air carried the scent of the ocean mingled with fresh flowers. With one last steely glance, he left the office, determination etched into his features. The thought of Maya ignited a fire within him, and he raced to the airport, the pulse of his heart quickening with every step as the airport's hustle and bustle enveloped him like a comforting embrace. The flight seemed interminable, but as he gazed out the window, the glimpses of the coastline painted in shades of blue and green stirred an exhilarating sense of hope. Memories flooded his mind, Maya's laughter, her gentle touch, and the way her eyes sparkled with kindness. Upon landing, he enlisted a taxi and the driver made small talk about how the island was coming alive with the summer season, but David hardly heard him, his mind racing with thoughts of the woman who embodied everything he yearned for. Arriving at the hotel, he burst through the entrance, where familiar sights and sounds greeted him, the chatter of guests savoring their meals, the delicate clinking of cutlery, and the laughter of his newfound family of hotel staff. He spotted Maya at the front desk, her hair cascading around her shoulders, catching the sunlight with a golden hue, and his heart leapt at the sight of her steadfast presence. Swallowing hard, he approached her, a lump of nervousness forming in his throat as he felt the weight of all his unspoken words pressing against his chest. The guests who filled the lobby turned their attention to him, curiosity dancing in the air, sensing that a rare moment was about to unfold. With everyone watching, David cleared his throat, catching Maya's wide-eyed gaze, a mixture of confusion and hope reflecting back at him. He took a deep breath, feeling the collective anticipation of the room as he began to speak, his voice strong yet trembling with emotion, proclaiming that the beautiful simplicity of life in Jeju had shown him more about true happiness than all the wealth he had ever known. He told her that the joy he wanted was not something he could find in a boardroom or a life dictated by labels, but in small moments like sharing an intimate dance under the stars or laughing over a clumsy mishap in the kitchen. He confessed that his days had been dim without her light and that he could no longer ignore the love that had blossomed within him amidst the beauty of the island. David finished with a heartfelt plea, revealing his true desire to be with her, not because he was abandoning his old life but because he was consciously choosing to pursue the love and freedom that Jeju and Maya offered him. Tears welled in Maya's eyes as the realization of his sincerity washed over her, the air thick with unspoken tension and lingering feelings. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of the hotel staff and eager guests, Maya felt her defenses crumble, her heart recognizing the truth she had hidden from for so long. As waves of emotion surged between them, she stepped forward, her voice trembling but steady, affirming that David's choice to embrace happiness meant everything to her. In that bustling hotel filled with the scent of ocean breeze and fresh flowers, a profound connection bloomed, a promise of love filled with the joy of second chances, binding their hearts together in a way that made every struggle worth it. Maya, overwhelmed by the whirlwind of emotions blooming within her, finally recognized the depths of her own heart as she threw her arms around David, their laughter echoing against the backdrop of the setting sun. The colors of the sky swirled in brilliant hues of orange and pink, mirroring the warmth that enveloped them as they stood at the edge of the beach, waves crashing rhythmically at their feet. David, with his newfound determination reflected in his eyes, shared his dreams of turning the quaint little hotel into a haven that celebrated the essence of Jeju, infusing it with flavors and experiences inspired by the island itself. As they bantered over silly things, each teasing remark was a sweet reminder of their journey from rivalry to connection, the ease of their familiarity wrapping around them like soft waves. Unbeknownst to them, the calm of this moment was soon to shift, as whispers of rumors began to travel through Jeju, weaving tales of a mysterious new guest arriving at the hotel. Just as they turned to leave the beach, hand in hand, a sleek black car rolled into the parking lot, stopping just outside the hotel entrance. The air thickened with anticipation when a figure stepped out, their features obscured by the setting sun. David glanced towards the hotel, a shiver of unease crawling up his spine as recognition flashed in his eyes. This was no ordinary visitor, this was someone from his past, someone who had the power to unravel the happiness they were weaving together. Maya instinctively sensed his change in demeanor, turning to follow his gaze, her heart quickening with curiosity. As the stranger approached, the joyful chatter between Maya and David faded, replaced by a tense silence that wrapped around them like fog. David swallowed hard, confusion and fear ghosting across his features as he caught Maya's gaze, his joy momentarily eclipsed by the unknown. "What is it?" she asked softly, her voice a soothing balm against the tension, yet she too felt a slow dawning of worry deep in her chest. David hesitated, words caught between dread and revelation, the laughter from moments ago drifting away like a lost dream on the breeze. The story had taken yet another turn, and with hearts pounding, they stood on the precipice of new challenges, the promise of their love hovering delicately in the balance. In the distance, the waves continued their eternal dance against the shore, as the sun dipped lower and lower, leaving only hints of light and invitation for them to explore the uncharted depths not only of their love but of the mysteries that awaited them. Little did they know, this was just the beginning of a deeper story, one filled with unexpected encounters, challenges that would reaffirm their bond, and the undeniable realization that love, resilient and fierce, had the power to thrive against all odds. As they took a step forward into the unknown, their hearts beat as one, promising exquisite adventures ahead, treasures waiting to be unearthed, and a love story yet to unfold in the ever-charming embrace of Jeju, where life is full of surprises, and every sunset holds a promise of new beginnings. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe to Happiness of Love. That way, you won't miss any of our heartfelt romances. See you in the next love story.